His name is above depression. His name is above loneliness. Oh, his name is above disease. His name is above cancer. His name is above every other name. That is who you are. That is who you are. Jesus. And that is who you are. Oh, I know that is who you are.
Father, indeed your name is above every name. Father, you're above anything that we can face, even in this day and time. God, I pray that you would help us. Help us to trust you. Help us not to lose faith. Help us to keep our eyes fixed upon you. Because you alone are God. Speak to us, Father, I pray, as we look into your word. In Jesus' name, amen. So I have a question for you this morning. Hannah, am I on? It's not on at all. Maybe so. I'm red. I have a question for you this morning. Now, I don't want you to get offended by this question. Is there 2 double A's back there, Hannah? Timothy, bring them to me, please. Please, Timothy. She's got them. But I don't want you to get offended by this question, okay? And after you hear the message, you'll know it's a legitimate question. It really is. Some of you, how many of you read Ecclesiastes 10 already? Not like in your life. I mean, just lately since we've been. Anybody? Raise your hand. Jeannie read it. Is that it? Only Jeannie? Okay. Paul read it. A couple of y'all read it. So here's the question. You ready for the question, Frank? Are you wise or are you a fool? It's a good question. And I know all of us say, how dare you call me a fool? People would do that to me. They would say it. I think a lot of times people don't realize what that means to call somebody a fool. But, part of it is, the Bible says that a fool says in his heart there is no God. But anyways. But are you wise or are you a fool? Now, you determine that, right? You determine that by your own lives. Look in Ecclesiastes 10. It tells us that a little folly is dangerous, right? And truly it is. In verse 1, he laid down the basic principle. I wish Herbert was here this morning. He kind of got me last Sunday about the fly and the perfume. But in verse 1, he lays down the principle that folly, basically it creates problems, right? It creates problems that those that commit it. Okay, that those that practice folly create problems. It says that what dead flies are to perfume, folly is to the reputation of wise people. So we really have to be careful about how we conduct ourselves. Right? Really, we do. Because you know what? Even some of the best intentions can be detrimental. Right? Here's the thing. Wise people stay away from folly. Right? I hope by the end of this chapter you'll have a good grasp of folly. But anyway, wise people stay away from it. It's the inclination of the heart, right? It's the inclination of the heart that determines whether one is wise or foolish. So I ask you the question: are you wise or are you foolish? What's the inclinations of our heart? Solomon was referring to the center of one's life. The center of one's life. The heart of the matter. The heart of the person. What's deep down in one's heart. You know, you hear this, the old cliche, what's in the well comes up in the bucket. Right? What's in the well comes up in the bucket. So yes, we're talking about the master controller, the one that truly is in control, the one that truly is governing your life, calling the shots, if you will, within us. The issues of life. Proverbs 4:23. Since the fool doesn't have wisdom in his heart, you know what he does? He gravitates toward that which is wrong. And then because of that, he gets into trouble. He gets into trouble. People try to correct him, but guess what happens? Not open to correction, right? It's not open to correction at all. He refuses to listen. And this tells everybody, verse 3, that he's a what? Yeah, he's a fool. Look at there in chapter 10, Ecclesiastes. No, this doesn't really go along with 4th of July, but hey, if the Son has set you free, then you're free indeed. Amen? Dead flies putrefy, how you say that? The perfumer's ointment, and cause it to give off a foul odor. So does a little folly to one respected for wisdom and honor. Okay, there it is, right? Verse 2. A wise man's heart is at the right hand, but a fool's heart is at the left. Even when a fool walks along the way, he lacks wisdom, and he shows everyone that he is a fool. If a spirit of the ruler rises against you, do not leave your post. Hello? Do I need to read that again? I can't tell you how many times I've seen that happen. There's a way that we should respond, and that's not it. If the spirit of the ruler rises against you, do not leave your post. For cancellation pacifies great offense. That is, an evil I have seen under the sun. An error proceeding from the ruler. Folly is set in great dignity, while the rich sit in lowly places. I've seen servants on horses, while princes walk on the ground like servants. Talks about foolish rulers. Lyndon B. Johnson said, a president's hardest task is not to do what's right, but to know what's right. To know what's right. And that requires true wisdom. Right? That requires true wisdom. If a ruler is proud, He may say and do foolish things that cause him to lose respect amongst the people, right? But if he's too pliable, then he is also a fool. Anyways, in verse 4, the picture here is of a proud ruler who easily becomes angry and takes his anger out on those around him, right? Becomes angry and takes it out on those around him. Proverbs 16:32, he who is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he who rules his spirit than he who takes a city. I like that. Proverbs 25, verse 28. Whoever has no rule over his own spirit is like a city broken down without walls. So it isn't necessary. It's not necessary for a servant to act like a fool. I mean, that's the worst thing that he can do, right? That's the worst thing he can do. Far better that they control themselves, stay right where they are, and seek to bring peace. But you see, so many times you don't see people acting that way. Instead, they act like a fool. They abandon their post. But if we understand Scriptures correctly, Scriptures say no. You help bring peace to the situation. You be patient, right? I know we don't like to hear this, but patience is a virtue, right? Patience is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It still is a good thing. It's good for you, and it's good for those around you. We must remember that. Through patience, Proverbs 25, verse 15, through patience a ruler can be persuaded, and a gentle tongue can break a bone? Wow. Okay. A king's wrath is a messenger of death, but a wise man will appease him. Proverbs 16:14. So, if he's proud, he'll say and do foolish things. But if the ruler is too pliable, he'll also be a fool. If he lacks character and courage, he will put fools in high office and qualified people in low office, is what he's talking about there. The servant will ride on horses while the nobles will walk. If a ruler has incompetent people advising him, then guess what? He's going to govern unwisely, right? He's going to govern unwisely, the nation unwisely. And Solomon's son, Rehoboam, he was proud, unyielding, and of course it led to the division of the kingdom. The best rulers and leaders are men and women who are tough-minded but tender-hearted. Tough-minded but tender-hearted, who put the best people on horses, right? And don't apologize for it. He gets into verses 8 through 11. He gets into foolish workers. People who attempt to do their work and suffer because they're foolish. Look at verse 8 to 11. He who digs a pit will fall into it, and whoever breaks through a wall will be bitten by a serpent. He who quarries stones may be hurt by them, and he who splits wood may be endangered by it. If the axe is dull, keep on chopping, right? Chop harder, right? We laugh at that, but so how many people do that? Just try to work harder. And one does not sharpen the edge. Then he must use more strength. But wisdom brings success. A serpent may bite when it's not charmed. A babbler is no different. So one man dug a pit. He fell into the pit himself, right? Why? Because he lacked wisdom and failed to take the proper precautions. Another man broke through a hedge, a wall, or fence. Nonetheless, the serpent bit him. How many of you have you ever watched the movie? I don't think it's showing. Yeah, it's still on TV. There's a show. I watch a lot of documentaries and stuff like that, and National Geographic News and stuff like that. But there was this one show about this guy in Africa that would go and catch snakes for people. Y'all, anybody ever seen that? Or am I the only one here? All right, I got somebody with me. I can't remember what the name of that show is. Yeah, kind of like Sweet Feet, isn't it? But anyways, so yeah, he goes around and he's in Africa, and man, in Africa, I'm gonna tell you something. It's not here, but you'll find the snakes in the most craziest places. And having seen that show and reading scriptures, it kind of brings light into it, because that's the case in Africa a lot. Snakes get into houses and places that you wouldn't even believe that there are snakes there. And not just snakes, we're talking about black mambas and stuff like that, the stuff that'll kill you real quick. And so the scriptures say you go and break through a wall and you get bit by a snake. Well, that's the case where they get into houses, little crevices under people. Kids will be in bed sleeping, there'll be a snake under the bed. Stuff like this all the time, right? You gotta watch Snake City or something like that, I think it's called. But a man and his wife, they'll go around. I mean, they got tattoos all over themselves. They go around and they get calls all the time. They go and catch snakes and release them back in the wild. But I've seen this, and they're being the darndest places in these houses. And I'm thinking, wow. One time, one was in a mattress in a bed. It was in the mattress. And we're talking about a black mamba. It's like, woo. But anyways, come back to earth now. One man broke through a hedge or a wall or fence, came and he was bit by the serpent. So serpents often, they found their way into hidden crevices and corners, right? And anyways, the man, he should have been more careful. Instead, he was overconfident. He didn't look ahead, broke through, and what have you. He was bitten by a black mamba and he died because he couldn't make it to the hospital in time. Verse 9 takes us to the quarry or the forest. There were careless workers, injured, cutting stones and splitting logs. Verse 10 pictures a foolish worker, a man who tried to split wood with a dull axe. That's what he's talking about. What will the wise worker do? We know that the wise worker will pause from his work and he'll sharpen the axe. As the popular saying goes, don't work harder, but work smarter. Right? Don't work harder, but work smarter. Look, then we get into another work was the snake charmer. Tanner should be here. At least I'm talking about snakes. He knows snakes. The snake charmer. Solomon described a performer who was bitten by a snake before the man had opportunity to charm it. Right? Kind of think maybe he was just in a hurry and wanted to get done with this little gig there so he can go on to the next gig because he'd make more money that way, right? Collecting his money too soon. So he was fooled and rushed ahead and he acted even though the snake wasn't charmed. The common denominator among these foolish workers, they were overconfident, right? They were overconfident and they ended up either hurting themselves or making their job harder. So be careful, don't be overconfident. Don't be a foolish worker. Foolish talkers, verses 12 through 15. In this paragraph, he pointed out 4 characteristics of their words, and we're going to look at that. Look at verse 12. The words of a wise man's mouth. How many of you have this highlighted in your Bible? I'm just curious. Does anybody have this highlighted? We ought to have this highlighted in our Bibles. The words of a wise man's mouth are gracious. Are gracious. The lips of a fool shall swallow him up. The words of his mouth begin with foolishness, and the end of his talk is raving madness. Raving madness. A fool also multiplies words. No man knows what is to be, or who can tell him what will be after him. The labor of fools wearies them, for they do not even know how to go to the city. Foolish talkers. First, they're destructive words, right? One of the characteristics of the words is destructive. The wise person will speak gracious words, right? The wise person will speak gracious words that are suitable to the listener. Think about that. How many times we consider what we're saying, is it suitable to those that are hearing it? Right? Is it helpful to them? To their occasion? You know, the thing I love about God, He always knew, right? He always knows the right things to say at the right time. Does He not? The right things to say at the right time. I can remember people tried to point me to Jesus and point me to Jesus and point me to Jesus. But I want to tell you something. When God spoke, it was exactly what I needed to hear, and I melted. I didn't run away from Him, as I did many times before. When people tried to bring me to Him, I ran away. But I'll tell you what, when He finally spoke and I heard, I mean, it was the right thing at the right time, and I melted and I came running to Him. He always knows the right thing to say at the right time. I'll read Isaiah 50, verse 4. The Lord God has given me the tongue of the learned, that I should know how to speak a word in season to him who is weary. To him who is weary. He awakens me morning by morning. He awakens my ear to hear as the learned. That's a good verse, y'all, by the way. If it wasn't, you need to take it home and you need to read it over and over and over and over again. Because I promise you it's a good word. The fool, he blurts out whatever is on his mind, and he doesn't stop to consider who might be hurt by what he says. He doesn't even care. In the end, it is the fool himself who is hurt the most. A fool is consumed by his own lips. We may try to hurt others with our lies, slander, angry words, but we're really hurting ourselves the most. He who guards his mouth, Proverbs 13:3, he who guards his mouth perceives his life, but he who opens wide his lips shall have destruction. One preserves, the other destroys. Proverbs 21, verse 23, whoever guards his mouth and tongue keeps his soul from trouble. Second, they're unreasonable words. Verse 13, unreasonable words. What he says doesn't make sense. And the longer he talks, have you ever seen this? The longer he talks, the crazier it becomes. It's like, it doesn't even make sense anymore. It's like, what are you saying? I see your lips moving, but I absolutely hear nothing. It makes no sense at all. Third, they're uncontrolled words. The fool is full of words without realizing that he is saying absolutely nothing. The person who cannot control his or her tongue, the one that can control his or her tongue, is able to discipline the entire body. That's what James tells us, right? That's what James tells us in chapter 3, verses 1 and 2. Jesus said, but let your yes be yes and your no be no. Whatever is more than this is from the evil one. Matthew 5:37. Finally, their words they're boastful words, right? They're boastful words. Foolish people talk about the future as if they know all about it, right? They know all about it. They're in control of what will happen. But Proverbs 27 verse 1 tells us, do not boast about tomorrow, for you do not know what a day may bring forth. And that's so true. In Bible times, the roads to the cities were well marked, as they are today, so that travelers could find their way. But the fool, he's so busy talking about the future that he loses his way in the present. Now, how much truth is that to today? That's scary if you think about it. He can't find his way to the city. Possibly an ancient proverb about stupidity. Then he gets into foolish officers, verses 16 through 20. It says this. Woe to you, O land. Woe to you, O land, when your king is a child and your princes feast in the morning. Blessed are you, O land, when your king is the son of nobles and your princes feast at the proper time. For strength and not for drunkenness. Because of laziness, the building decays. Through idleness of hands, a house leaks. A feast is made for laughter, and wine makes merry, but money answers everything. Do not curse the king, even in your thoughts. Do not curse the rich, even in your bedroom. For a bird of the air, there's no saying there we use today, a bird of the air may carry your voice. A bird in flight may tell the matter. He gave 4 characteristics of these foolish men. One is the one of indulgence, the characteristic of indulgence. If the king is immature, the people he gathers around him will reflect his immaturity and take advantage of it. But if he's a true nobleman, he'll surround himself with noble people. But let me tell you this. Age is no guarantee of maturity. Okay? It's no guarantee of maturity. And you know what? Youth sometimes surpass elders in spiritual zeal. I've seen very young people be more wise and more mature than someone that is very old. And we're speaking spiritual matters. Okay? Oswald Chambers said, spiritual maturity is not reached by the passing of years, but by obedience to the will of God. Obedience to the will of God. The important thing is what? It's maturity and not age. Verse 16 suggests that this servant became king with the help of his friends. Now he was obligated to give them all jobs so that they could repay him. Verse 18, incompetence. Proverbs 18, verse 9. He also who is slothful in his work is a brother to him that is a great waster. Immature people enjoy the privileges and ignore the responsibilities, while mature people see the responsibility and as privilege, and they use it to help others around them. Help others around them. Verse 19, indifference. This verse declares the personal philosophy. Okay, verse 19. Somebody asked me about that verse. Verse 19 declares the personal philosophy of the foolish officers. Right? Eat all you can, enjoy all you can, and get all you can. That's the philosophy of a fool. Right? They're totally indifferent to the responsibilities of their office. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Indiscretion. Verse 20. When you're saying, a little bird told me. You ever use that phrase? A little bird told me? Probably originated from this verse. A group of these officers making light of him behind his back. Be careful. We should be careful about what we say about others. You never know who's listening. You never know who's listening. It just might be your neighbor. Even if we can't respect the person in the office, you know what? It's kind of like this. Maybe you cannot respect me for whatever reason. But you should be wise enough to respect the position that I represent. Even if you can't respect me. You see what I'm saying? You shall not revile God, nor curse a ruler of your people. So what must we do? We must avoid folly, right? We must avoid folly and live by the wisdom of God. The best thing we can do is what? Is to trust God, to do our work, and accept what God sends us. Folks, God is in control. Even today, even in the midst of this pandemic and the rioting that's going on in the world, God is in control. He's in control. Trust Him. Do our work. Accept what He sends our way. And you know what else? Enjoy each day. Enjoy each day of our lives to the glory of God. Because today is a day that the Lord has made. Rejoice and be glad in it. Rejoice and be glad in it. Amen? Father, we thank you so much for who you are. We thank you for reminding us that you are God and that you are on your throne. That you are mindful of us. Father, I pray that you would help us to avoid folly, to be drawn to wisdom. Father, help us to trust you. God, we love you. Have your way in our lives, we pray. In Jesus' name.